For the first time in this town's history, bars just like this one behind me will be open for business on Sundays. While Hurricane Florence is still hitting the East Coast, it's impacting students here at EIU. Thanks, Everett. Two Central Illinois schools are considered some of the best educational institutions according to the Illinois School Board's 2018 report card. Both of these schools rank within the top 10% of high-performing schools. Today, I spoke with administrators from both schools about what their teachers are doing right.
In the elementary grades, we put a lot of emphasis on reading and math to make sure all of our students are reading at grade level by third grade. That's what Crestwood Elementary Superintendent Danette Young says is behind the success of their school being one of the highest performing schools in Illinois. Young says the teachers not only provide a great learning environment, but they provide an experience that students won't get at other schools. The students are comfortable, the parents know the building, the staff, and they get to experience this for 9, 10, even 11 years if they start as a 3-year-old in preschool. Principal of Crestwood Elementary, Dan Lynch, says it's the long-standing relationships teachers have formed with students that have helped add to that success outside of the classroom.
I think that's such an incredible component to what we do in the classroom. We have found that if you build those relationships and those students know that you truly care about them as individuals, they'll do anything you ask them to do academically.
Paris's Mayo Middle School also made the list for high performance, and administrators believe their success stems from a hard-working staff.
Well, it's really a credit to our amazing staff that we have at the middle school and the amazing kids that we have here.
Science teacher Chris Clausen says it's very rewarding to know her hard work as an educator is being acknowledged.
You just go into the classroom and you're trying to do your best every day. You're trying to engage these kids that maybe had a rough night, they didn't have some place to sleep.
70% of schools 70% of Illinois schools fell in the commendable category, including the majority of Coles County schools. This year's report also launched the state's new support and accountability system, which rates schools on how well they meet the needs of students. Thanks for joining us for tonight's edition of Newswatch Nightcap. I'm Kayla Davis. Topping the news, a catastrophic storm nears the U.S. as one of the most powerful in decades. Students at a local university are watching the weather forecast closely as family in that area begin to evacuate. I spoke with two Eastern Illinois University students on what their relatives are facing in the Carolinas. Eastern Illinois University student Kim Shine says she has several family members living in the Carolinas. She's been watching the coverage of Hurricane Florence closely and says, thankfully, her loved ones are evacuating and headed to Illinois.
I was definitely nervous and I was definitely scared, but once they told me the protocol of how they're going to get home, I felt more relieved because, you don't want to lose a friend or a family member in a storm.
And with the storm as massive as Hurricane Florence, Shine is relieved her family is safe from a situation that's plagued her relatives before. Back in 2005, her cousins lived through Hurricane Katrina.
Hurricane Katrina, I didn't have as much knowledge as I do now because I was younger. So I had 2 other cousins that was involved in that hurricane. But as I was listening to it, I saw that a lot of people were dying and getting hurt, or some people was even stuck, where they couldn't even come home.
Sam Jackson is another Eastern student with family on the East Coast.
I have an uncle who lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and he's taking necessary precautions. He has bags packed.
Jackson says his uncle is ready to leave at any time. He's got a game plan because this isn't his first major storm.
Get more comfortable with over time. I mean, he has the experience. He knows what to do with these situations.
I'm glad I can talk to him and, make sure they're good and just make sure, they even feel more happier being back home with family instead of, being stuck down there trying to figure out what is the next step to get home.
In Charleston, I'm Kayla Davis for WEIU Newswatch. The American Red Cross Central Illinois chapter is sending around 40 members from the Coles County area to help out. The representatives will help out with food and water distribution and are making sure residents of the Carolinas evacuate safely. Representatives also are making sure shelters are clean and safe. In tonight's Health Watch, if you're pregnant and thinking about whether or not you should get the flu shot this season, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention may have some news you can use. Kim Hutcherson reports. Nationally, while some of the final contestants are waiting to be called, the 2018 midterm elections have come to a close.
A blue wave washed over part of Congress, with Democrats taking back the House of Representatives and Republicans holding on to the Senate. Natasha Chen is in Washington with a full breakdown.
In Arcola, voters' opinions for another referendum went up in smoke. Election results for Arcola show almost 72% of voters chose to maintain leaf burning in the city without any regulations. City Manager Bill Wagner says the city has never had an ordinance banning leaf burning, and currently there's no leaf pickup service in the city. A small Indiana town is mourning the loss of 3 young siblings. They were killed when they were struck by a vehicle waiting for a school bus. Caitlin Kendall reports. Good evening, and thanks for joining us for tonight's edition of Newswatch Nightcap. I'm Kayla Davis. Topping the news, several candidates for Coles County general election spoke to voters in a public forum. Candidates answered all kinds of questions from our state's budget to taxes to turmoil in Springfield. Many audience members say it's an event like this that will ultimately help them in the voting booth.
Forums like this are necessary. I think that they are very valuable to not only to the candidates too, to get a chance to get their message out to the constituents, but also to the constituents so then they can make informed decisions about who they want to vote for.
It's much better to have people here and to have see them over a period of time, and to have both of the candidates appear at the same time. And somehow it's somehow more interesting than the debates on TV.
While the candidates last night didn't exactly debate, they answered numerous questions about their candidacy and positioning on social issues. The first part of the forum was reserved for those running for Coles County Sheriff. Democrat Greg Vodry is facing incumbent Republican Jimmy Rankin, who didn't attend. Rankin's representative Carrie Pullum says Rankin had other obligations.
There are some that will see this as a detriment to voting for him, but he had a commitment that he couldn't change. He's out of state, and there's nothing he could do about that. That when the date came up, he knew he couldn't be there. He regrets that, but he's doing what he needs to be doing tonight.
According to forum rules, Pullum was allowed to read an opening and closing statement prepared by Rankin, but couldn't take questions, and that disappointed Rankin's opponent.
Obviously, his response to questions didn't exist because he chose not to be here today. This was an event that was scheduled more than 2 months ago. It's a priority for me to be here. Whether or not he shows up, I don't have any control over that.
The second half of the forum focused on the candidates running for state representative in the 110th District, Democrat Shirley Bell and Republican Chris Miller. Both candidates spoke on their goals as state representative and how they plan on keeping Eastern Illinois University financially sound. Bell and Miller say these forums are important for many reasons.
It's a beautiful way to allow the people who will be voting, obviously, and so therefore the constituents that you'd represent get to know you, get to know what your positions are.
It enables you to know the pulse of the district, to know what concerns people. More so when you're just passing by or walking in a parade.
Really learned a lot today about the candidates for state rep, and there are definitely some very stark differences between the two of them, and I think it was good.
Hey, I like that.
Charleston resident Dale Downs has been a patient at Sarah Bush Lincoln Health Center for more than 8 years now. Downs says his wife brought him to Sarah Bush Lincoln after having heart complications. Together, they utilize the health center's workout facility 3 times a week to stay in shape and strengthen their hearts before she passed away.
My general practitioner, Dr. Ranchero, said, well, you have a high blood pressure. You could exercise with her. And so that's how I got started.
And to this day, Downs still exercises at Sarah Bush, but now he'll be using equipment at the new and much improved Heart Center.
We moved in on Monday, and they did a nice job of not rearranging them too much, so it looks very familiar to us if we just look at the machines, because they're the same ones, and so we know where to go.
Not only are the patients pleased with the new facility, but the staff are just as excited. Sarah Bush Lincoln Heart Center Director Colleen Swick says the hospital has made changes that cater both to the client and the employee.
I think the biggest benefit is the coordination of services and the fact that everything's in one location. The new Heart Center allows everything to be in one area to where patients come in one entrance and are able to obtain all their cardiology services without having to go between departments or move throughout the entire hospital building.
And Swick says it's that kind of convenience that developers had in mind when they started building the Heart Center.
We've more than tripled the amount of square footage that we had, so staff, even things as simple as a locker room with an area for their belongings to go, that's something that we didn't have historically, and they have now. So those little things sometimes make a huge difference.
There was a good reason they changed it, and so we went along with it. But it's a good facility.
In Mattoon, I'm Kayla Davis for WEIU Newswatch. May 13, 2016, Charleston police and numerous other emergency responders rushed to an area near Sarah Bush Lincoln Hospital on Route 16 for reports of a traffic incident. The incident was a vehicle versus pedestrian crash, a crash that killed 19-year-old Cassandra Ramey of Mattoon. Charleston Police Detective Joel Schutz says, from the beginning, this has been a difficult case to solve.
Primarily what we do is press releases. We have the benefit of cooperating with news outlets such as yourself, who also take an interest in the story and help us to spread the word that we're still looking for information.
Ramey's mother, Crystal Peters, says Ramey and 5 of her friends went to Sarah Bush to help care for a friend who was intoxicated. Ramey decided to leave the hospital and walk back to Mattoon. On her walk home, Ramey was hit and killed by an unknown driver. As her case reaches the 3-year mark, Detective Schutz says it's the time he spent on the case, getting to know Casey's life before the incident, that keeps him motivated to find justice.
The people that she's known, family and friends whose lives that she's touched and that her death has affected.
Casey's family says she'll always be remembered as an outgoing, fun, loving daughter, sister, and friend. They want closure and can only hope at some point the driver will come forward. In Charleston, I'm Kayla Davis for WEIU Newswatch.
As president of Eastern Illinois University, this is my first year as president that EIU was informed of an appropriated budget at the beginning of the fiscal year.
That's what President Glassman had to say to an audience of students and faculty today during his State of the University address. With increase in enrollment, Glassman is excited for what more students can bring to the university.
For this year's annual student EIU photo, I'm so very pleased to say the 3 letters E, I, and U were very densely populated, just what we have been working so hard to accomplish.
Glassman wants to keep the number of students on the rise with several programs, projects, and new staff members. EIU student Mariah Mossberger works with students daily as a resident assistant in a dorm on campus. Mossberger also notices an increase in the energy not only on campus, but on social media.
People seem more excited that enrollment's up, and it's definitely present all over social media.
Glassman says they have made advancements to their marketing campaign. The campaign had positive results, increasing student community and awareness.
We are fortunate to have witnessed an encouraging return on our investment in time and focus. And I know we can achieve even higher enrollments in fall 2019.
In Charleston, I'm Kayla Davis reporting for WEIU Newswatch.